Greetings, all my duckies out there. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'm coming at you with another DuckTales, the 2017 series, another episode review. This time it's Season 2's Episode 20, titled The Golden Armory of Cornelius Coot. And if you didn't know, well, now you're gonna know. Cornelius Coot was in fact an ancestor of the duck family. There are three primary members, clans I guess you could say, of the duck family. The Coots, the Ducks, and the McDucks. And Cornelius and his Coot family are one of the pillars of that family in its entirety, as Cornelius was the founder of Duckburg, which kind of makes you think about the fact that, the Duck family, specifically around the point of Della and Donald, is when all these families kind of coalesced into one group. They kind of danced around each other in the past at sometimes, but now they've kind of all coincided into this one family unit, and it's just like, you think that would be a more prominent thing, but we're only really finding out about this now. And it was never really pointed out too much outside of this and the Don Rosa comics, as Cornelius Coot was apparently this mysterious figure who would, pop in and out of certain places. He fought off the Beagle family in order to claim Duckburg and keep it safe. And, he had this mystery about him where he would pop in and out of certain places, and his gunfire was heard all around the place as if he were some kind of phantom, just dodging in and out all over the place. So there's this massive legend going on with Cornelius that really paints him as this really incredible figure. And I love the fact that Miss Quackfaster is also here, as we really don't see her outside of the library most times, but she seems to run this entire, historical settlement and all that good stuff, just running the place, which just makes me wonder who's at the library, honestly. But she's recounting this to the kids and all the great things about Cornelius and all that good stuff, but the boys, they're not really having any of it. I kind of feel like it's not really exciting, it's not historically accurate enough, and Louie's not really caring too much for the buttermilk. It's kinda gross. But Webby is here for another reason, as she has found the diary of Della Duck, and specifically that Della once tried to find the golden armory of Cornelius Coot, which Webby is hellbent on seeking and just doing the one thing that Della was never able to do, finding that golden armory. And she gets the boys on board with the thought of historical accuracy for Huey, gaining a buck and some kind of treasure for Louie, and great adventure for Dewey. She ropes them in on all of this in trying to find out what was the secrets held by Cornelius Coot. Meanwhile, we see that the Beagle family is in on this as well, as they're determined to find out and prove that the Beagle family should be the rightful owners of Duckburg, as per usual. Meanwhile, Della's in a bit of her own predicament, as yet again Launchpad has managed to destroy the Sun Chaser, or Cloud Smasher, Destroyer, whatever they want to call it. But Launchpad says, with some bubble gum and a few bits of duct tape, it'll be right as rain. So that's what's happening now. But this was a long overdue matchup with Della and Launchpad, because it's just like, well, who's ultimately going to be the pilot of the McDuck family? And apparently it just might be both of them. As Webby goes about trying to find a secret entrance or some sort of clue as to how to get to the treasure, the boys are very hesitant on all this. They don't feel like there actually would be anything involved with any of this. But as Ma Beagle tries to formulate a plan as to get to the treasure before the Duck family, we are shown that Big Time is no longer put in charge of the Beagle Gang, as he's bumbled things up a few too many times, and Ma Beagle basically kicks Big Time out. Meanwhile, the kids actually do manage to find a hidden entrance thanks to some spilled buttermilk. And while the Beagle family set about kidnapping Miss Quackfaster, we're actually shown that the old gal's actually capable of rescuing herself. I don't know if that's a testament to her skills or how badly the Beagles mess up at every turn. But, she ends up kind of pouring Big Time a little bit of a mug of that buttermilk as he tries to drown away his sorrows. But as the kids manage to uncover the hidden entrance leading down in deep within the grounds of the fort, Big Time notices this where the rest of the Beagles do not, and he's determined to prove himself by following the kids to Cornelius's treasure. Meanwhile, Della is less than impressed with Launchpad's ways of patching up the Sun Chaser. Bubblegum only holds so well, as Della, who has actually spent the past, 10 years rebuilding an entire spaceship, knows a lot more about engineering than she probably would have ever beforehand. Meanwhile, as the kids make their way throughout the tunnels underneath Fort Duckburg, underneath the fort, they come across this kind of fuzzy peat moss looking thing. But Huey notices this peat moss doesn't seem like peat moss, as it actually turns out to be some form of spider silk, as the boys are completely overrun. And yeah, no, none of that. That's no. But Della manages to get the Sun Chaser back and better than ever, showing a very 90s sense of style with the paint job. And she is none too keen on having Launchpad touch it, more than likely because he'd probably destroy it upon the first, touch of his grimy little fingers. But she doesn't feel too great about completely crushing the guy, so she actually hints that maybe he could take some lessons. And Launchpad feels that the best person to take some lessons from would be none other than Della Duck, with him finally donning his signature flight cap, which is a staple of his character. It's been a long time coming. All we need is for him to get his signature scarf, and we'll have the good old Launchpad back finally. Much to Della's cringe. She is none too keen on the idea of teaching what essentially amounts to the unteachable. And as the kids make their way deeper into the tunnels, the boys aren't really feeling Webby's enthusiasm, as they feel they might actually end up dying, all for a pointless, non-existent treasure. But Webby is determined to prove herself in this situation, discovering some minecarts, and, manages to gold Dewey, whose adventurous nature outweighs his sense of self-preservation at every turn. But as Big Time makes his way through the spider cave, he ends up falling into one of the minecarts. So the kids decide to pursue him, only for the ride to be less than actually thrilling, as they have no choice but to push the minecarts up the shaft. And as Della tries her best to get Launchpad on board, to actually get him to learn something, it proves to be less than a positive experience, as it's very apparent that Launchpad knows nothing about flying whatsoever, and he's a danger in the air, to the point where Della absolutely tears into him in this very well animated segment, very fluid motions and nice body work, body language, and all that good stuff. I really need to find out who does these specific parts, because every once in a while there's just this scene in the episodes where there's just very fluid animation for no real reason. Just two characters talking with each other, but it's fluid as all get out. And this was the scene where the characters just move so intensely fluid, and it really just caught me off guard, because it's just like, whoa, did we just step up the budget for a second? No static imagery or anything, just nice movement during this whole entire segment. But we ended on Launchpad feeling very dejected, so not a great scene for Launchpad, but really beautiful animation. And as the kids manage to reach the end of the line, they do inquire as to what happened to Big Time, with him apparently having been sealed in this spider-infested cave. Oof, poor Big Time. But Webby is still determined to proceed forward as they finally come upon Cornelius Coot's armory, only to find out that the golden armory of Cornelius Coot is nothing but golden kernels of corn. As the boys are completely devastated to find out, this apparently is nothing more than a system for storing corn. For some reason, Cornelius Coot was just storing up corn underground for some reason. And as the boys are completely ready to give up, Webby isn't quite convinced. She feels that there has to be more to it than just corn. But as the Beagles show up, they're all too intent on finding out what the kids have found in Cornelius Coot's armory. And as they manage to capture the kids, Louie lets them know, hey, the secret is corn. If you want it, knock yourself out. But Webby does her best to try to play in that there's something more to Cornelius Coot's golden armory. Something I forgot to mention is that Della, as a descendant of Cornelius Coot, is on a job to do some skywriting over the fort. And as she gets ready to activate the smoke machine, it ends up actually showing that Launchpad kind of knew what he was doing, as because Della simply put a filter over the bubblegum patch job that Launchpad usually does, it ended up filtering all the smoke right into the cockpit of the Sun Chaser, whereas Launchpad usually manages to get it so that it flows seamlessly out of the actual plane. And because of this, Della can't see, and they have no choice but to have Launchpad do a controlled crash, something that he specializes in. And the Sun Chaser ends up crashing right into the underground tunnels where all the kids and the Beagles are, as Della is actually perplexed that they managed to survive that kind of a crash, and she actually starts to think that maybe there's a little bit more to Launchpad than she initially thought. But as the kids continue to be cornered by the Beagles, Della actually steps in and completely takes control of the situation, subduing all the Beagles, much to the joy of the boys and much to the dismay of Webby. She's been very fixated on kind of one-upping Della during this whole entire trip. And as the boys notice that Webby kind of seems to have walked off, Della chases after her as Big Time shows up, and it's shown that he has managed to befriend the spiders, and they've joined him in his quest to reclaim his spot on the team of the Beagles. And as Della finds Webby desperately searching for another clue to what exactly Cornelius was hiding, Della sees that Webby has her old journal, and Webby admits that she kind of felt a little bit intimidated by Della's presence. That's something that I kind of didn't consider. I always thought when Della showed up, she and Webby would have had this bond because Della was so much like Webby in her childhood. But as it turns out, Webby felt intimidated because Della had done so much at Webby's age. She had gone on these great, massive, globe-trotting adventures, and Webby feels like she's not living up to any of that. And she thought that maybe if she had found the one thing that Della was never able to find, she'd have been able to prove herself. But Webby feels that all her legacy will amount to is corn. But Della says, look, you did a lot. You've come a long way. You don't have to live up to my legacy. You don't have to live up to the expectations of others. And Della kind of realized she's kind of been pushing that on Launchpad as well. But, she tries to talk Webby down and just say, look, you're your own person. You'll have your own legacy. You'll go at your own pace. Don't, put yourself in this position where you have to live up to someone else's legacy, because you'll end up just completely missing your own. Be your own person. Do your own thing. That's what makes you, you. But, interestingly enough, we see a mechanism set off by a candle that Webby had placed down that immediately starts to cause all of the corn to turn into these massive blast of popcorn out of nowhere, out of all the silos. And seeing this and hearing the popping of the popcorn, Webby realizes that was Cornelius's secret. The way that he managed to defeat the Beagles of old, to convince them that there was this mysterious gunfire coming from all around them, that was the popcorn underneath the fort. All that gunfire was just popcorn popping from all around the Beagle people. And that was Cornelius's secret. It wasn't that he was just a simple farmer, much like in the comics. He was a great tactician. He was a strategic mind. He was smarter than the smarties and tougher than the toughies. Something that shows that he was a duck after McDuck's own heart to a certain degree. And that shows that Webby was able to figure out something that Della was never able to. And as Big Time continues to try to work his way back into the Beagle gang, Ma Beagle tears into him, and he just kind of finds sympathy with the little spider, showing that, yeah, see, my mom's always talking down to me. But they start to hear all the popping of the popcorn, convincing the Beagles specifically that it's the ghost of Cornelius Coot come to get his revenge on the Beagles. But Della and Webby come in order to free the boys, and to escape from the onslaught of popcorn coming their way, as Big Time protects his family. And in order to escape, Della has no choice but to put everyone's lives in the hands of Launchpad McQuack, Crash Expert, as he manages to crash his way out of the side of the mountain. That should be impossible, but if there's anyone who knows crashes, it's Launchpad. And as the Beagles were basically saved by Big Time, Ma says that Big Time can be in the gang again. Just get rid of the spiders. And as all of the boys managed to get what were after in the adventure, with the historical accuracy of Cornelius's tactics told by Dewey, who gets to have the fame from being the descendant of such a legendary tactician, and as Huey gets to have the historical accuracy, passed on to Mrs. Quackfaster. He gets to, show the historical accuracy and how Cornelius used various farm tools to point the way to the armory. Louie is now selling, popcorn, authentic Cornelius Quack popcorn, and making a nice little buck off of the experience as well. So the boys all managed to get something out of this, and Webby managed to get her own adventure, her own legacy, and was able to show Della that, sometimes people have their own way of doing things, and that's not always wrong. A very good lesson. A very fun episode, all things considered. I love getting little bits and pieces of previous Duck lore here and there because it's always a great time. Don Rosa and the various different writers created these wonderful stories for the DuckTales, and just Scrooge, Donald, and their whole past, everything involving their family is just so expansive, and there's so much to draw from that there's just a wealth of things that you can do with it. We've barely scratched the surface of members of each branch of their family, and there's so many ways you could really go with all of it. Hell, even the one series, Legend of the Three Caballero, was about Donald's extended family and, passing something on to him that impacted the rest of his life. These things are just such a great source of fun and interesting tales you can really tell, and it's always a good time whenever I get to see a peek into the past of this really out there family. But tell me your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. Did you enjoy getting to know a little bit about one of the most prolific members of the Duck family? Or do you feel like better time would have been spent on something a little bit more interesting? Maybe knowing where Donald is somewhere down the lines. But I'm really glad we're getting to see Webby and the boys continue to go on these wild and wacky adventures. And I'm glad we're getting to see Della just living her life in Duckburg, making up for all this lost time that she's had over the years. I think it's a great opportunity, and it's a fun time. But again, tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. If you liked this video, leave me a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike and tell me what I did wrong in the comment section below so I might better myself for future videos. Subscribe and hit the bell icon, that way you never miss out on another DuckTales episode review, as I do my best to finally get to the finale of season 2, hopefully before season 3 comes out, cause man, thanks a lot Disney for just dumping all of these episodes all at once. But again, I just get to go at my own pace, so it's all good. And if you want to find me on social media, just Google Duuz-Diz-Din. I am everywhere, for better or for worse. 18 or over is preferred. And until the next video, just remember that there's always another solution to a problem, and sometimes it takes your own personal point of view and your own can-do attitude to discover what some might overlook. That's what thinking outside the box is. You don't have to live up to someone else's expectations. You just gotta live up to your own and have fun doing it. Until next time, I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and it's high time I went to bed. Bye-bye.